My daughter signed away her baby, so we raised him as our own. 25 years later, she showed up to extort us for money. My daughter gave up her baby, so my husband and I stepped in and raised him like he was our own. 25 years later, she showed up out of the blue, trying to squeeze money out of us. Back when Denise was 18, she surprised me with what she called a gift. Turned out, it was a positive pregnancy test, 2 bright pink lines staring right at me. I let out a long sigh. Denise had always been a bit reckless, never one to think ahead or take things seriously. Before I could even react, she started yelling. And I'm not getting rid of this baby, so y'all better step up. Now, just for context, when she said, y'all, she meant me and her dad. And by step up, what she really meant was, take full responsibility for raising her child. Now, my husband and I, we've always loved kids. We'd even talked about having more. So it didn't take long for us to agree, and before we knew it, Denise was practically shoving legal papers in our faces. She was determined to sign over all her parental rights, said she didn't want anything hanging over her in case we hit tough financial times down the road. Not that she ever had a dime to her name. Anyway, we named him Daniel, and he turned out to be one incredible kid. He was curious about everything, kind to everyone, and always remembered his manners, never asked for a thing without saying, please. He was always offering to help his dad out with work, even though my husband was an accountant and didn't exactly have chores a 10-year-old could do. But the offer? It warmed our hearts every time. When Daniel turned 10, he started asking about his birth mother, our daughter. You could see in his eyes that he really wanted to get to know her. Every year on Mother's Day, he'd make 2 cards, one for me, and one for her. He even had a small box under his bed filled with envelopes labeled, "To Mommy." When he turned 11, he tried reaching out to her. Asked to meet up with her over a dozen times that year. My husband and I would gently steer his mind elsewhere, trying to show him that he was deeply loved right where he was. But it wasn't until the 13th time she flat out rejected him that he finally gave up. That's when he started focusing on building his own life instead. I gave that boy everything I could to make him feel like he belonged. My husband and I even dipped into all our savings just so he could go to college without the stress of juggling a part-time job. We made it a point to send him on a vacation every year, just him and one of us, so he'd get those experiences, those memories. By the time he turned 22, it seemed like Denise had faded from his memory. She still kept in touch with us once in a while, but she never asked how Daniel was doing and never made an effort to be part of his life. Honestly, I was thankful. By then, I loved that boy more than I ever loved Denise. And truth be told, she had shut us out of her life too. She blocked us on every social media app you can think of, WhatsApp included. The only thing I knew about her was that she had gotten remarried and moved clear across the country. Honestly? Good riddance. Daniel ended up dropping out of college, but not for the reasons you might think. He and a few buddies started a car detailing business, and their marketing took off like wildfire. The business was booming. And the sweetest part? He insisted on giving me and his dad 15% of everything he made, just to thank us for raising him the way we did. There was only one thing about him that really bugged me. He was so focused on trying to repay us. He wanted us to enjoy the things we supposedly missed out on while raising him. It used to get under my skin because, to us, raising him was the best time of our lives. Nothing else could have made us happier. A year later, he met Sophie, the love of his life, and let me tell you, she was just the kindest soul you could ever meet. But of course, life doesn't always stay peaceful. One Thanksgiving, while we were all sitting around the table, Daniel got a phone call. I figured it was a customer calling in, and I couldn't help but smile with pride. He even put it on speaker. But as soon as the call connected, I felt my heart sink. It was Denise. She started by asking how he was, and he kept his answers short and polite, but distant. Right then and there, I realized something. He didn't love her anymore. She asked to meet up at a restaurant, and he told her he'd think about it before ending the call. "Honey, your father and I can come with you," I offered, seeing how his brow was furrowed like he was seriously considering it. "That would be amazing," he said, lighting up the whole room with that smile of his. But I knew better. That girl hadn't reached out in 25 years, and I knew she wasn't showing up now out of love. We met at the fanciest restaurant in town, and right off the bat, she didn't even bother to hug him or ask how he was. First words out of her mouth. "So what's the meal budget for tonight?" Daniel just gave a half shrug and said, "Whatever." She went ahead and ordered lobster ravioli with a bottle of white wine like she was royalty. When she saw his phone screen light up and caught a glimpse of his lock screen photo, she pounced. "Oh wow, is that your girlfriend? She's stunning." Her tone was so fake, you could have heard a pin drop. Then she followed up with, "She reminds me of me and my ex-husband when we were still together. We used to be so cute." I asked her what happened between them, and she just casually said she had cheated on him. Daniel rolled his eyes and tried to change the subject. "Stuff just happens sometimes. Anyway, I'm having a hard time finding work lately. Think you could help me out?" He hesitated. I guess?" "Great," she chirped. What came next hit me like a truck. "I need about $14,000 to lock in an apartment. I'll send you my bank info, just make sure the money's in there before the weekend." I waited for Daniel to blow up, to put her in her place. But he didn't. He just nodded and sat there waiting for his food. I was about to open my mouth and let her have it, but then I felt a little pinch under the table. It was Daniel. So I stayed quiet. Little did I know, my boy had something up his sleeve, and Denise was about to finally get what she deserved. When we got home that night, I was still fuming. I paced back and forth in the kitchen while Tom made tea, trying to calm me down. Daniel sat at the counter, casually scrolling through his phone like the night hadn't just turned my stomach inside out. "I don't get how you're staying so calm," I said, staring at him. "That woman abandoned you, ignored you for most of your life, and now she shows up demanding money like nothing ever happened?" Daniel looked up from his phone with that same sly little smile. "Mom, relax. I've got it covered." "What does that even mean?" I asked, completely baffled. He tilted his phone toward me. He had his banking app open, and he was right in the middle of sending money to an account I didn't recognize. The amount? Exactly $14. $14? I asked, blinking in disbelief. "Yep," he said. "She asked for money? Didn't say how much in her message, so I figured $14 would buy her a decent lunch." Tom let out a loud laugh, and I couldn't hold it in either. For the first time that night, the tension in my shoulders melted away. Turns out, my boy wasn't a pushover after all. "You're something else, kid," Tom said with a proud grin, giving Philip a good pat on the back. The next morning, I was in the kitchen frying up some eggs when Philip's phone started lighting up like crazy. He was still sleeping, but his phone was charging right there on the counter. I wasn't trying to snoop or anything, but the messages kept popping up on the screen. One read, "Where's the rest of it?" Then another came in, "This isn't funny. I need that money by tomorrow." I went and woke Philip up, showed him what was going on. He just chuckled, typed something real quick, and headed off to the shower like it was no big deal. Curiosity got the best of me, so I glanced at what he'd typed. "Sorry, budget's tight this month. Hope the $14 helps." By lunchtime, the phone calls started rolling in. Philip didn't answer a single one, just let them ring out and go straight to voicemail. By the time evening came around, there were 17 missed calls from Denise. He played the voicemails on speaker so Tom and I could hear them too. Each one got worse, more angry, more desperate. The last one was her just screaming, "You think this is some kind of joke? I'll show you what happens when you mess with me." My stomach dropped. That sounded like a threat. "Maybe we should call the police," I said, starting to feel nervous. Philip just shook his head. "She's all talk. Always has been, right?" I nodded slowly, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. I knew Denise. Knew how nasty she could get when things didn't go her way. 3 days went by with no word from her. I started to think maybe she'd finally let it go. Philip got back to work at the car detailing shop, and everything started feeling normal again. And then came the call. It was just around lunchtime when Philip rang me, sounding rattled. "Mom, she's here. She showed up at the business. She's making a scene." I grabbed my car keys, hollered for Tom, and we both raced over to the shop. Even before we stepped inside, we could hear the shouting through the parking lot. Denise was right there in the middle of the reception area, yelling at the top of her lungs while customers stared in disbelief. "You owe me. I gave birth to you. The least you can do is help your mother out," she shrieked. Philip stood calm as ever, hands raised a little, trying to keep things peaceful. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting my business." "Ma'am?" she shot back. "I'm your mother, you ungrateful little poop." I was about to step in, ready to shut her down myself, but Tom held me back gently. "Let him handle it," he whispered. And Philip did just that. He walked over to her, still cool as a cucumber, and said firmly, "You need to leave now, or I'll call the police." "Go ahead," she snapped. I'll tell them how you promised me money and then went back on your word. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his assistant Ralph quietly picking up the phone. Good. Philip calmly reached for Denise's elbow, guiding her toward the door. I never promised you $14,000. He told her. I said I'd help you out, and I sent what I could afford. Now please leave before you make this worse for yourself. What happened next threw me for a loop. Denise yanked her phone out of her purse, shoved it in Philip's face, and snapped. See this? I've been recording this whole thing. I've got the text where you agreed to help me. I'm gonna post this online and show everyone what kind of heartless son abandons his mother in her time of need. Later, we found out she hadn't started recording until after she'd been yelling and throwing a tantrum in front of the customers. But still, the damage was already done. She stormed out, almost knocking over a rack of car air fresheners on her way. Philip spent the next hour apologizing to every customer there, even offering them discounts to smooth things over. 3 folks canceled their appointments right then and there. I could tell he was stressed, though he was trying to keep it off his face. That night, we sat around the kitchen table, trying to figure out how to handle the whole mess. Then Philip's phone dinged with a new message. It was a link from Sophie. Denise had already posted the video on Facebook. She'd edited it to make it look like Philip was coldly brushing off his poor, struggling mother. She even added this long, dramatic caption about how her successful son refused to help her avoid homelessness. The comments were brutal. People were calling Philip heartless, swearing they'd never use his services again, even threatening to leave fake bad reviews on his business page. This is slander. Tom growled, face red with rage. We can sue her for this. Philip shook his head. Nah. That'd just drag everything out longer. I've got a better idea. The next day, Philip sat down in his office, hit record on his camera, and posted a video of his own. He looked straight into the lens and calmly laid out the truth. How Denise had given him up at birth. How she'd rejected him over and over when he tried to connect as a kid. How she suddenly popped back into his life demanding $14,000 after 25 years of silence. He showed screenshots of their messages, right down to her asking for cash without even pretending to care how he was doing. I don't hold any grudges, he said at the end. I honestly wish her the best. But I'm not gonna be manipulated or bullied. And I won't let lies ruin the business I built with hard work and integrity. The response was incredible. Support poured in from everywhere. Old customers jumped into the comments, sharing their good experiences and praising Philip's professionalism. The whole thing flipped on its head. But Denise wasn't done yet. A week later, Philip got a call from the local police department. Someone had filed a report accusing him of theft. The claim? That he'd verbally agreed to loan her money and then backed out, which she tried to twist into theft by deception. The officer on the phone sounded skeptical but said they still had to follow through since it was an official complaint. Philip had to go down to the station and give a statement. I went with him. He didn't ask me to, but I wasn't about to let him walk into that alone. And let me tell you, I've never been prouder. He sat there, calm and respectful, explained everything clearly. He showed them the texts, pulled up the $14 transfer on his banking app. The officer actually chuckled a little. So, you did send her money. Just not what she wanted. Yes, sir, Philip said. She asked for help, and I helped her with what I felt was reasonable. I never promised any amount. The case was closed pretty fast after that. The officer even told us off the record. Stuff like this isn't really a criminal matter, it's a civil issue at best. I figured that whole mess was finally behind us, but I was wrong. When Denise realized she couldn't get to Philip directly, she switched tactics. She showed up at our house one afternoon when Philip wasn't around. It was just me and Tom home. At first, I barely recognized her standing on the front porch. She looked rough, hair greasy, clothes wrinkled, and eyes puffy from crying or drinking, maybe both. Can I come in? She asked, voice all quiet and pitiful. Please, Mom. I just want to talk. Even though I knew better, I let her inside. Tom was in his study working, so I called him down. The second he saw Denise sitting at our kitchen table, his expression hardened. What do you want now? He asked flatly. That's when she broke down in loud, dramatic sobs that shook her whole body. I've ruined everything, she cried. I just needed help and didn't know how to ask the right way. I handed her a tissue but kept my emotional distance. I'd seen this act before. Why'd you file a police report against Philip? I asked. She dabbed her eyes and sniffled. I was desperate, she said. I'm really about to be homeless. My ex is cutting me off for good, and I've got nowhere to go. So your solution was to try and get your own son arrested? Tom's voice was like ice. I wasn't trying to get him arrested, she insisted. I just wanted someone to force him to help me. Then she turned to Tom, and her voice changed, softer, sly. Dad, you understand, don't you? You always understood me better than Mom did. I saw something shift in Tom's eyes. Was it doubt? Sympathy? Whatever it was, it unsettled me. He's got the money, she went on. His business is booming. What's $14,000 to him? It's nothing to him, but it'd change everything for me. Denise, I said firmly, Philip doesn't owe you anything. You gave up your parental rights. You turned your back on him when he tried to connect with you. You can't just show up after 25 years demanding a handout. But he's my son, she cried out. No, I said, getting up from my chair. He's our son. We raised him. We were there for the school plays, the scraped knees, the heartbreaks. Where were you? She looked back to Tom again, trying one last time. Dad, please. Talk to him for me. He'll listen to you. And to my surprise and horror, Tom paused. Maybe we could help you out a little, he said. Not the full amount, but something to help you get back on your feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tom, no. She's manipulating you. She's still our daughter, Helen, he said, using my full name the way he always did when we clashed on something serious. And what about Philip? I asked. What kind of message does that send him? Denise saw her chance and jumped on it. Philip doesn't even need to know. It could just be between us. Family helping family. I was about to push back again when the front door opened. Philip had come home early. He froze in the entryway the moment he saw her sitting there. His face went blank, same neutral expression he wore the last time they crossed paths. What's going on here? He asked quietly. Your mother came by to apologize, Tom said, jumping in. Denise quickly nodded. Yes, I feel awful about everything. I was hoping we could start over. Philip looked straight at me. I didn't say a word, but he could see right through me. Is that really why you're here? He asked her. She nodded again, wide-eyed and innocent. Of course. What other reason would I have? To squeeze money from my parents because you couldn't get any out of me, he said. Her whole demeanor changed in an instant. The fake tears dried up. Her face turned sharp and cold. Well, what did you expect? She snapped. You're out here living large while I'm barely surviving. Somebody in this family has to step up. I think you should leave now, Philip said, keeping his voice calm and level. Not until I get what I came for, she barked. And what exactly is that, Denise? He asked, still calm, but with a steel edge. She turned to Tom. Dad was just about to help me out. Weren't you, Dad? Tom shifted uncomfortably. I said maybe we could help a little. I saw Philip's face fall. That hurt hit him hard. His voice got quiet. Dad, she's playing you? Just like she's been playing me. Tom looked torn, unsure what to say. I reached out and rested my hand on his arm. Listen to him, Tom. He's right. Denise stood up then, chair screeching across the floor. Fine. Be that way. All of you. I'll figure it out myself, like I always have to. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy. Philip didn't look at Tom. Tom stared down at the floor, ashamed. I'm sorry, son, he finally said. I don't know what I was thinking. She's always known how to twist you around her finger. Philip replied, flat and emotionless. Even after everything. Then he walked out of the kitchen. A few minutes later, I heard his car pull away. He didn't come back that night. The next few days were tough. Philip kept his distance, throwing himself into his business and trying to manage the damage from Denise's stunt online. Even though his response video helped, a few fake reviews had popped up, and they were causing real problems. Tom was beating himself up for almost falling into her trap. I tried to reassure him, but deep down, I was disappointed too. After all this time, I thought he'd see through her. About a week later, Philip finally came over for dinner. He seemed distracted, checking his phone every couple minutes. Everything okay? I asked as we cleared the table. Yeah, just waiting for a call, he said, kind of vague. That call came while we were having dessert. He excused himself to the living room to answer it. When he came back, he had that sharp, calculating smile on his face. That was Sophie, he said. Everything's set for tomorrow night. Set for what? Tom asked. I've invited Denise to dinner. Philip said calmly. As a peace offering. I nearly dropped my fork. You what? After everything she's pulled? He nodded. I think it's time we settle this, once and for all. I don't know if that's a good idea. I started. Please, Mom. Just trust me. I've got a plan. Something in his eyes told me he meant it. So, even though my gut was telling me not to, I agreed. Tom did too, although I could tell he was just as uneasy about it as I was. The restaurant Philip picked out was even fancier than the last one. The kind of place where dinner for four would run you over $500 easy. When we got there, Denise was already waiting. She looked a whole lot better than the last time she showed up at our house. Her hair was freshly styled, she had on a crisp new dress, and her nails were done like she just left the salon. I couldn't help but think, so much for being broke. Philip greeted her with a hug, which honestly caught me off guard. Denise looked surprised too, but she bounced right back, slipping into that. Happy to see my son. Act with ease. I'm really glad you called, she said, laying it on thick. I've been feeling awful about how things went between us. Philip gave her a smooth smile. Let's just put it behind us and enjoy dinner, okay? At first, the evening went off without a hitch. Philip kept asking her questions about her life, and he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. She absolutely loved the attention, talked nonstop about herself. I noticed Philip kept topping off her wine glass every time it got low. By the time our entrees came out, she was on her fourth glass and talking more freely. So, Denise, Philip said, all casual, tell me more about this apartment you need help paying for. She launched into a whole speech about some luxury condo with a view of the ocean. It's perfect, she sighed. But the deposit's a killer. And you don't have any savings from your last marriage or jobs? He asked. She waved that off like it was nothing. Oh, I've never been good with money. And Frank, my ex, he's being such a jerk about the settlement. That sounds rough, Philip replied, his tone still friendly. So what's your plan if your family can't give you the money? She took another gulp of wine. Oh, I'll figure something out. I always do. Then she leaned in, almost whispering like it was a secret. Between you and me, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Like what? Philip said, gently pushing her along. She gave this tipsy little giggle. Well, that police report was just step one. If that didn't work, I was thinking of calling up some of your big-name clients, maybe tell them a few sob stories about how my own son treats his poor mother. I gasped out loud. Tom gripped his fork like it might snap in half. Philip didn't even flinch. Huh, he said. That's quite the tactic. So all that stuff about being homeless, was that made up? She shrugged like it didn't matter much. Not entirely. I do need a place to live. But maybe I stretched the truth a bit. She laughed again. You should have seen your dad's face when I cried at your house. He was ready to hand over a check right there. So you admit you were playing us? Philip asked, still calm. Oh, come on. It's not playing. It's just knowing which buttons to push. Then she winked at him. You're my son. You should want to help me. Even though you left me and shut me out when I tried to reach you as a kid? Her face darkened a little. That was different. I wasn't ready to be a mother back then. And now you're suddenly ready when you need cash? She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. This is what family does. We help each other. Even if that means lying and filing fake police reports? She leaned back in her chair like it was no big deal. Look, I did what I had to do. And I'd do it again. That's just who I am. Philip smiled and pulled his phone from his pocket. He tapped a few times on the screen. Thanks for clearing that up, Denise. I just wanted to be sure I got it all straight. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? He turned the phone around so she could see the screen. His voice recorder app was still running. All the color drained from her face. You recorded me? Yep. He stood up. We're done here. As we left the restaurant, I heard Denise scrambling behind us. Philip, wait. I'm sorry. We can fix this. But he didn't even glance back. None of us did. Out in the parking lot, I pulled Philip into a hug. I'm so proud of you, I whispered. Thanks, Mom, he said. But this isn't over yet. What do you mean? Tom asked. Philip checked his watch. By now, Sophie's already posted the full audio to my business pages, along with a clear statement explaining everything. He paused. The truth's finally out there. I pulled out my phone to check, and sure enough, there it was. A post on Philip's official page with the recording and a plain explanation of everything that had gone down lately. You planned this whole thing? I asked, amazed. He nodded. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist showing off once she thought she had the upper hand. People like Denise always want credit for how clever they think they are. The ride home was quiet. We were all lost in our own thoughts. I couldn't stop thinking about how Philip had handled all of it, with patience, with smarts, and without stooping to her level. The fallout hit fast and hard. By the next morning, Denise's accounts were flooded with angry comments. People who had sided with her now called her out for her lies and manipulation. Even the few friends she had left started backing away. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then came the final scene. 3 days later, Denise showed up at Philip's office again. This time she wasn't yelling. She looked completely wrecked. I happened to be there helping with some files when she walked in. Philip looked up and sighed. Now what, Denise? You've ruined me, she said softly. My friends won't talk to me. I can't even get hired. Everyone's heard the recording. I really am going to be homeless now. Philip studied her quietly for a moment. That's not my responsibility, he said flatly. She took a step toward him, her face twisting with anger. How can you be so heartless? I gave you life. And then you walked away from it, he replied calmly. You made your choices. Now you have to deal with the outcome. Then she suddenly lunged forward, raising her hand like she was going to slap him. I shot up from my seat, but Philip grabbed her wrist mid-swing. Don't, he said, his voice low and steady. Just don't. She froze. And all the fight seemed to drain out of her in an instant. She crumbled, tears streaming down her cheeks. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. For a brief second, I thought I saw something flicker in Philip's eyes, maybe a little pity. Get help, he said softly. Real help. For whatever it is that makes you treat people the way you do. And maybe someday, maybe we can build something, but not like this. Never like this. Then he let go of her wrist and stepped back. I'm not giving you money. She stared at him a while, not saying a word, then turned and walked out the door. Once it shut behind her, Philip exhaled deeply, like he'd finally let go of something heavy. I went over, wrapped an arm around his shoulders, and asked gently, You okay? He gave a slow nod. Yeah. I think I finally am. For almost 2 weeks after that scene at Philip's store, Denise was nowhere to be seen. I kept bracing myself for the next twist, some new scheme, another pop-up meltdown, but nothing came. Just silence. For a second, I started to believe maybe she'd finally gotten the hint and moved on with her life. Then, one morning, I was going through my emails and felt my stomach drop. There it was, an email from Denise sent to me, Tom, and Philip. The subject line was one word, goodbye. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It wasn't long, just a few lines about how she couldn't handle being humiliated anymore, and she was going to end it all. Classic Denise, always putting on a dramatic show. But what if, this time, she actually meant it? I immediately called Philip. As soon as he picked up, I blurted out. Did you see the email? Yeah, I saw it, he replied with a sigh. But don't worry, Mom. How can you be so sure? I asked, already grabbing my car keys to go check on her. Because, he said calmly, she just posted a selfie on Instagram 10 minutes ago. She's at a coffee shop. Caption says, New Beginnings. I sank into the chair, relief washing over me in waves. So this was just another play for sympathy. Exactly, he said. She's hoping we'll freak out, come running, maybe even offer her money so she can start over after her lowest moment. He knew her too well. What should we do? I asked. Nothing, he said, firm and steady. Absolutely nothing. And that's exactly what we did. None of us replied to the email. Philip blocked her on every social media app and changed his phone number. Tom and I followed suit. It felt cold, but necessary. Like cutting off something toxic before it poisons the whole system. Life finally started settling down again. Philip's business bounced back from the PR mess, and funny enough, the whole fiasco actually earned him a few new clients, people who admired the way he handled himself. Folks love a good story of someone standing their ground. About a month after that. Sewers Light. Email. I was at the grocery store and bumped carts with someone in an aisle. When I looked up to apologize, I found myself staring right into the face of Frank, Denise's ex-husband. Helen? He asked, clearly surprised. Is that you? It had been years since I'd seen him, not since way before the divorce. He looked older, sure, but also healthier. Happier. Frank. Hi, I said, not really sure what else to say. What is the etiquette when you run into your estranged daughter's ex? Thankfully, he spared me from figuring that out. I heard what happened with Denise and Philip, he said gently. I'm really sorry. I gave a small shrug. It's not your fault. No, but… He paused. I probably should have warned you. When she started talking about reconnecting with Philip, I knew she was up to something. She just maxed out all her credit cards and was looking for a new cash cow. So she really was broke? I asked. Oh yeah, he said, nodding. But not because I cut her off, like she claimed. The divorce settlement was plenty fair. She just spends like money grows on trees. After we wrapped up shopping, we ended up grabbing coffee together. Frank filled in a bunch of things I'd never known before. How she cheated on him, more than once. How she emptied out their shared savings account before walking out on the marriage. How she tried turning their mutual friends against him with lies about abuse. It's like she can't stop herself, he said, stirring his coffee without looking up. She doesn't see people. She sees opportunities. I thought about all the times I'd excused her behavior growing up. How I convinced myself I'd just misplaced the money she stole from my purse. How I pretended to believe her lies about where she was going, just because facing the truth felt harder. How I let her wrap Tom around her finger, again and again. I enabled her, I said quietly. For years. Frank reached over and gently patted my hand. We all did in our own way. But Philip didn't. I smiled, heart full of pride. No, he sure didn't. Later that evening, I told Tom about bumping into Frank. He says Denise's moved to Arizona. Trying to start over with folks who don't know her history. Tom just nodded, looking worn out. The whole ordeal had aged him more than it had me. Especially after how close he'd come to falling for her lies at our house. Good, he said quietly. Maybe she'll stay there. But of course, it wasn't over. It never really is with Denise. 3 months later, Philip and Sophie got engaged. They decided to throw a small celebration at their place, just close friends and family. Maybe 20 people total. I was in the kitchen helping Sophie arrange the food when the doorbell rang. I heard Philip open it, then silence. Too much silence. I peeked around the corner and felt my stomach sink. Denise was standing there, holding a gift bag and wearing a big, fake smile, like she belonged there. Surprise! She chirped, trying to slip past Philip into the house. Heard my baby boy is getting married. Philip stood firm, blocking the doorway. How did you find out about this? And how do you even know where I live? She waved it off like it was no big deal. Oh, I've got my ways. So, are you gonna let me in? I brought champagne. I started to step in, but Philip gave me a look that said I've got this. Denise, he said calmly, you weren't invited. Her smile wavered. But I'm your mother. Of course I should be at your engagement party. No, he repeated. You're not invited. And you're not welcome. Her face darkened fast. Is this about that little misunderstanding we had? I thought we were over that. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Philip said, his voice steady. You tried to extort money from me, filed a false police report, and threatened to ruin my business. And when that didn't work, you sent a fake suicide threat. She actually looked offended. I was going through a rough time. You could show a little compassion. By then, a few of the guests had noticed the commotion. They were peeking from inside, curious and concerned. I noticed Sophie walking up behind Daniel, her face full of concern. What's going on? She asked. Daniel didn't look away from Denise. Nothing, he said flatly. She was just leaving. Denise's eyes flicked over to Sophie, and I saw something mean flash in them. So you're the one taking my son away from me? She spat. Sophie blinked, confused. Excuse me? He was going to help me, Denise hissed. Until you turned him against me. You think you're so perfect, with your pretty face and your… That's enough. Daniel cut in, his voice sharp and steady. You need to leave. Right now. Or I'm calling the police. Denise glanced around and seemed to finally notice everyone watching. Faces in the room showed everything from confusion to disgust. She was losing control, and she knew it. Fine. She snapped, shoving a gift bag into Daniel's hands. I just wanted to give you this. Show there's no hard feelings. Daniel took the bag cautiously, peeked inside, and quickly shut it again. His face turned pale. Get out, he said, his voice tight. And don't ever contact me or my family again. Denise smirked like she thought she just won something. Enjoy your party, she said sweetly, then turned and walked back to her car. As soon as she was gone, I hurried over to Daniel. What was in the bag? I asked. He handed it to me without a word. I looked inside, and my stomach dropped. It was a baby onesie with Grandma's favorite printed on the front, and a note that read, "When you have kids, I'll be part of their lives whether you like it or not." The whole mood of the party took a nosedive after that. Daniel tried to act like it didn't get to him, but I could tell he was shaken. The idea of Denise trying to wedge herself into his kids' lives, it clearly scared him. That night, once most of the guests had gone home, the four of us, Daniel, Sophie, Tom, and I, sat together in the living room, trying to figure out our next move. We could get a restraining order, Tom suggested. On what grounds? Daniel asked. She hasn't exactly made a threat. That onesie felt like a threat to me, Sophie said quietly. She'd been unusually quiet all night. I reached over and gently squeezed her hand. We won't let her near your kids, sweetheart. I promise. Daniel ran a hand through his hair and sighed. I thought I handled this. I thought she finally got the message. People like Denise don't change, I said, my voice heavy. They just find new ways to cause damage. We didn't come up with a clear answer that night, but we all agreed. We had to stay alert. The next day, Daniel installed security cameras around the house, just in case. Weeks went by. No sign of Denise. The wedding planning kept moving along. Sophie found a gorgeous dress, and they booked a venue for the spring. Life kept going. Then one evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Is this Helen? A woman asked. Yes, who's this? My name is Monica. I'm Frank's new partner. Frank, Denise's ex-husband. My guard shot straight up. How did you get my number? From Frank. He thought you should know. Denise's been arrested. I sat down hard. Arrested? For what? Credit card fraud, she said. She stole Frank's card info and ran up thousands in charges. She paused. But that's not the real reason I'm calling. She took a breath. The police found a notebook in her apartment. It had all these notes, plans really. Ways to get money from Daniel. My heart started pounding. There were details about his business. She went on. His home address. Even Sophie's work schedule. My blood ran cold. Have you told the police about her history with Daniel? I asked. Frank's talking to them right now. They're taking it seriously. Between the fraud and that notebook, they're pushing for jail time. I thanked her and hung up, then immediately called Daniel. He and Sophie came straight over, and I told them everything Monica had said. So she's been watching us? Sophie asked, her voice barely a whisper. All this time? Daniel pulled her close. It's going to be okay, he told her. She can't hurt us now. We later learned Denise had been planning to catch Sophie alone, to try and convince her to pressure Daniel into helping his poor mother. She'd even made notes about using future grandkids as leverage. It was cold, calculated, chilling. Denise ended up getting 18 months for the fraud charges. That notebook helped seal the deal, even if they couldn't charge her separately for stalking without a clearer threat. The day she was sentenced, Daniel, Tom, and I were in the courtroom. She didn't look at us once. Didn't even acknowledge we were there. Like we were just strangers. As they led her away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for the daughter I'd lost a long time ago. Relief that she couldn't reach us, at least not for a while. And deep, overwhelming gratitude for my son. The wedding happened as planned the next spring. It was beautiful. Sophie glowed, and Daniel couldn't stop smiling. They had a small garden ceremony with just their nearest and dearest. During the reception, Daniel pulled me aside. I've got something for you, he said, handing me a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with one charm, a little heart. What's this for? I asked, my eyes welling up. For being my real mom, he said softly. For loving me when she couldn't, or wouldn't. I hugged him so tight I could barely breathe. Words didn't even come close. Later, while Tom and I slow danced, I looked across the room. Daniel and Sophie were laughing, heads close, lost in each other, and the life they were building. We did good with him, Tom whispered in my ear. I leaned my head on his shoulder. Yes, we did. Denise ended up serving 14 months. She never reached out again. According to Frank, she's kept quiet. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about what she really lost. Not just the money she tried to squeeze from us, but the relationship with her son. The chance to know him. To see the amazing man he's become. To be part of his life, his wedding, maybe even his children's lives. But most days, I don't think about her at all. Mostly, I just feel thankful. Thankful that Daniel had the strength to break the cycle. Thankful he chose love over fear. And thankful he built a life that she could never touch. Grateful that he chose to break the cycle rather than enable it. Grateful that, despite everything, he still has the capacity to love and trust. 2 years after the wedding, Sophie gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Daniel called us from the hospital. His voice choked with emotion. "They're perfect, Mom," he said. "Absolutely perfect." When we arrived at the hospital, he placed his daughter in my arms. "Meet your granddaughter, Helen," he said softly. I looked down at her tiny face, so peaceful in sleep, and felt my heart expand. This was what family should be. Not manipulation or obligation or guilt. Just love, freely given and gratefully received. As for Denise, well, she made her choices, and we made ours.